Hi everybody, welcome back. Before we can analyze the claims surrounding the Karistus, we first need to establish something very important. What exactly are they supposed to be? The Karistus appear in a very specific stream of modern exopolitical material connected with the work of Gosia Duzak in the communication with Yazhi Swaruu. According to those sources, the Karistus are described as one of the most ancient civilizations associated with our local stellar region, and in some accounts, they are even portrayed as one of the oldest civilizations operating inside this solar system. In these descriptions, the Karistus are not portrayed as a newly arrived extraterrestrial group observing Earth from a distance. Instead, they are presented as a long established civilization that has been present in this region for an immense period of time. Some accounts claim their presence in the solar system stretches back hundreds of thousands of years, possibly even longer, depending on how their own mythology is interpreted. Physically, they are described as humanoid beings with a general resemblance to what many researchers would call a Lyrian morphology. In other words, they resemble humans in overall body structure. However, the descriptions add several distinct characteristics. They are often said to have long necks, almond-shaped eyes, and very calm and deliberate way of moving. Their eyes are sometimes described as very light in color, almost white in certain accounts, although darker eye colors are also mentioned in some descriptions. Their clothing is usually portrayed as ceremonial or elegant rather than militaristic. They are often described wearing long robes or tunics, similar to garments associated with certain Andromedan descriptions in contact literature. Their demeanor is said to be slow, composed, and highly deliberate, which gives them an appearance of extreme calm or authority. Another unusual feature associated with the Karistus is their connection with the winged symbolism. Some descriptions claim they are sometimes perceived with wings, although it's often explained that this is not necessarily biological. It could be, though. Instead, it may be a symbolic projection or a chosen appearance meant to communicate something specific to human perception. In other words, they may deliberately present themselves in a way that resembles the archetype humans would call and interpret as angelic. This is one of the reasons some researchers who study these accounts have suggested that the human concept of angels could partially originate from encounters with beings like the Karistus. Whether that interpretation is correct is impossible to verify, but the similarity between the winged humanoid beings and the traditional angel imagery is difficult to ignore. Another aspect of the Karistus description involves their level of consciousness, or what many people would call density of existence. In some of the transcripts, they're described as primarily sixth density beings, meaning they operate at a level of consciousness beyond the typical physical state experienced by humans. However, even within the same body of material, this idea becomes more complicated. Later explanations challenge the idea of assigning any civilization to a fixed density level. According to those discussions, all races exist across multiple states of consciousness, depending on the individual level of awareness of each being. From the perspective, the Karistus would not simply be a sixth density race. Instead, they would be a civilization whose members exist across different states of consciousness, just as humans do. Another description associated with them involves the concept of bioplasmatic or energetic forms. Some accounts claim that when not incarnated in a physical body, the Karistus may exist in a more energetic or plasma-like state of consciousness. However, the same explanation also points out that this ability is not unique to them. In theory, any conscious being can express itself in energetic form when outside of a biological body. Perhaps the most striking characteristic attributed to the Karistus is their reputation as an extremely advanced civilization. They appear and are frequently described as one of the most technologically and spiritually developed species operating in this region of space. Some statements even claim that they may be the most advanced civilization currently active in our solar system. However, despite that description, they are not portrayed as detached observers or neutral philosophers. Instead, they are depicted as a civilization with strong opinions, strong cultural beliefs, and very specific interpretations of their historical relationship with Earth and humanity. They are said to see themselves as mentors and protectors of human civilization. Yet at the same time, they also hold a very clear view that the Earth once belonged to them. That belief leads directly into the most controversial aspect of the entire Karistus narrative. Their claim that humanity and possibly all Lyrian-looking species across the galaxy may have originated from them in some form. Once we start examining the Karistus explanation of human origins, the story becomes far more complex. And that's where the investigation really begins. Now that we have established what the Karistus are claimed to be, the next step is to examine one of the most unusual ideas associated with them: their interpretation of where humanity and many other human-looking species in space actually came from. According to the narrative that appears in Cosmic Agency transcripts connected with Gosia Duzak and the Tigetan contact figure Yazhi Swaruu, the Karistus hold a very specific and very controversial belief about the origin of the Lyrian species. They claim that all Lyrian races are in some sense descended from them. This does not necessarily mean biological descent in the ways humans normally think about ancestry. Instead, the explanation is often framed as both biological and spiritual. In other words, from their perspective, humanity and other human-looking species across the galaxy are variations or hybrids that ultimately originate from the Karistus civilization. This claim goes far beyond Earth. In their interpretation, races such as the Tigetans, the Engans, and many other humanoid groups are not separate evolutionary branches, but expressions or derivatives of the Karistus lineage. The idea is that these races may have developed unique cultures and appearances over time, yet their deeper origin traces back to the same fundamental source. From the Karistus perspective, this concept extends even further. They see the conflict taking place on Earth as part of a much larger struggle between two opposing groups of consciousness. On one side of the conflict is described as the Karistus and their hybrids. The other side is described as the Vlash. According to this interpretation, the Vlash represents the group associated with the negative races, including reptilian factions, gray species, and other entities often described as regressive. In this framework, the situation on Earth becomes a continuation of a much older cosmic rivalry. To the Karistus, the events unfolding on Earth are not simply political or biological conflicts. They interpret the situation as a manifestation of duality playing out through consciousness itself. Two large families of souls competing for influence within the same planetary environment. And another important part of their belief system is how they define the term hybrid. In this context, hybrid does not simply refer to a genetic mixture between two species. Instead, it can also refer to a soul connection. Individuals living on Earth who have origins connected to other civilizations are described as hybrids in this sense. In modern language, these individuals are often referred to as starseeds. From the Karistus perspective, a human being with off-world soul origins would still be part of their extended family because they believe all Lyrian lineages ultimately trace back to them in some way. This interpretation is very different from the explanation often presented by the Galactic Federation narrative. According to that story, Lyrian races spread throughout the galaxy during what is called the Great Expansion, seeding many planets and developing into different branches of humanoid civilizations over time. The Karistus do not fully accept that version of the story. Instead, they present a much more metaphysical explanation. In their mythology, the emergence of the Lyrian species is described as a form of spiritual manifestation, consciousness itself expressing through biological forms across many worlds. In that interpretation, the Karistus are not simply one civilization among many. They see themselves as the original source from which many of those expressions emerged. This belief system has very significant consequences for how they interpret the situation on Earth. If humanity and other Lyrian species ultimately originate from them, then the presence of hostile forces attempting to dominate the planet becomes something more than an invasion. It becomes an intrusion into what they consider their own extended lineage. That idea leads directly to the next major claim in the Karistus narrative. The belief that Earth and possibly the entire solar system was originally under their influence long before other groups arrived. And that belief forms the foundation of their claim that they once had stewardship over this world. If the Karistus believe that many Lyrian races originate from them, then the next part of their worldview follows logically from that belief. The Karistus also maintain that the Earth and the surrounding solar system once belonged to them. This idea does not appear to be framed purely as a territorial claim in the sense of humans normally think about ownership. Instead, it's described as something closer to stewardship. From their perspective, the solar system was historically within the sphere of influence long before other civilizations began arriving here. So, the Karistus have been present in this region for a long time. Okay, possibly hundreds of thousands of years or more. During that time, they are said to have maintained a level of oversight or guardianship over certain planetary environments, including Earth. According to this interpretation, Earth was not originally a contested world. It was simply one environment within a system that the Karistus regarded as part of their domain. The situation began to change when other groups entered their region. The arrival of other civilizations eventually led to conflicts over influence and control. The regressive factions began to establish their own presence in the system. Over time, this created a complex political landscape involving multiple extraterrestrial civilizations, alliances, and competing interests. In that context, Earth became far more than just another inhabited planet. Earth became strategically important because of the type of consciousness developing on it. According to the Karistus perspective, the value of the planet is not simply its physical resources or its location. The true importance of Earth lies in the collective consciousness of the beings living on it. The planet's overall state of consciousness is shaped by the minds of its inhabitants. As different groups influence the population, the energetic character of the world itself changes. In that sense, Earth represents something like a focal point where different streams of consciousness intersect. From the Karistus viewpoint, this makes the struggle for Earth extremely significant. If the consciousness developing on Earth aligns with their values and their lineage, then the planet remains connected to what they consider their extended family of Lyrian civilizations. If opposing forces gain influence, then the development of that consciousness could move in a very different direction. This interpretation is one of the reasons the Karistus narrative often describes the situation on Earth as a conflict between two large groups of influence rather than a simple geopolitical dispute. One side is associated with the Karistus and their allies, while the other side is associated with regressive factions, including certain reptilian and gray species. Another important aspect of their claim involves the idea that they once had much greater influence over the development of the planet. The Karistus believe that if Earth had remained under their stewardship, many of the destructive cycles that humanity has experienced would have never occurred. This does not necessarily mean they intend to reclaim the planet in an invasive way. The Karistus do not view themselves as conquerors. Their role is that of guardians or mentors who believe the planet was taken out of their sphere of protection. However, this interpretation is not universally accepted by other groups, specifically the Galactic Federation. The Galactic Federation takes a very different position. The Federation is often described as being that no civilization owns a planet simply because it existed there first. Instead, a world belongs to the beings currently living on it. That difference in philosophy creates one of the most important tensions in the entire Karistus narrative. From the Karistus perspective, Earth is part of a historical domain and part of their extended lineage. From the Federation perspective, Earth belongs to the humans who inhabit it now. That disagreement sets the stage for a much larger conflict involving political alliances, competing philosophies, and different ideas about how the future of humanity should unfold. This disagreement is one of the main reasons their relationship with the Galactic Federation eventually began to deteriorate. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, the Karistus represent something much deeper than just another extraterrestrial civilization. They present an ancient presence in this solar system, a civilization that sees humanity not as a random species that appeared on a small planet, but as part of a much larger family of Lyrian beings spread throughout the galaxy. From their perspective, Earth is not just another world. It's part of a lineage, part of a story that began long before recorded human history. That perspective is also the reason their disagreement with the Galactic Federation matters so much. It's not just a political disagreement. It's a difference in philosophy and about responsibility. One side believes in stepping back and allowing events to unfold. That would be the Galactic Federation. The other believes that when a civilization is part of your own lineage, standing aside while it's being manipulated or controlled is not neutrality. It's abandonment. So in many ways, the Karistus represent the idea that humanity is not alone in this struggle, and that the future of Earth is connected to civilizations that have been watching the development of this planet for a very long time. But the most important part of this entire story may not be the Karistus themselves. It may be what their existence implies. If humanity is truly connected to a much larger family of civilizations, then the events taking place on this planet are not isolated. They are part of a much bigger dynamic playing out across many roles. Okay? And whether people are aware of it or not, Earth has become one of the most important crossroads in that story. The real question now is not whether other civilizations are involved in what is happening here. The real question is what role humanity is going to play in the next chapter of that story. Thank you guys for watching.